Welcome to this week's episode of the Aiming Five Hole Podcast. Still here along with my man Ryan. Hey Ryan, how you doing?
Well, Phil, been a great week. Been a great
Yeah,
week.
absolutely. What do we got this week?
Well, we got Habs and Leafs updates as usual. We'll talk about some of the coaching changes, maybe.
Absolutely.
I
And we
think
got a
that's
lot of
a
injuries going on.
lot of injuries going
Yeah,
on, especially the big
absolutely.
boy himself. And
Absolutely.
then hopefully, if we've got some time,
We're gonna get to the ratings
ratings.
this. We're gonna get to the ratings this week. Maybe our teams have
Is
only
this the
played
week
a
we get
couple
there?
games each. So where do you want to start? You want to start talking about? I know last night you had a tough night last night. I
All
thought
right, we'll talk
they
about the
started
Habs
really
first.
well, and then what happened in the second period?
All right, we'll talk a little Habs here. So
Especially after a
let's
good game against the Oilers.
Well, that's right. So that's where I want to start because good news comes first. They
Yeah.
look fantastic against. They look fantastic against the Oilers. Well, at the beginning, I thought they were going to give up um, you know, a couple of goals up front, but Montembeault stood tall, and then they really sort of locked things down. And then were patient, and they took advantage of the scoring opportunities they had. They had a great Gallagher tip to get things started and their positioning was great. Their neutral zone play was great. No odd man rushes. It was fun to watch, and it was well, fun might be a strong word because they were definitely still being very conservative, and it looked like a Jacques Lemaire New Jersey Devils game for a while. But
But that's how they got to
beyond that,
win. That's how they got
they
to
got to
win.
win, and it looked great. And then they had 5 days off, and they laid a complete egg in the second period against a very good Vegas team. And they look in the first period, they definitely looked like they were hanging on a little bit. I think at one point Vegas was on pace for like 67 shots on goal during the during the game, but they got out of the first period 0-0, and then I don't know how to say it, like three
I couldn't believe
god
how
awful
quickly it got out of control.
god awful turnovers, like just mental bonehead plays. Kirby Doc, Uri Slavkovsky, like the guys you want to see learning from those mistakes. And this team is so fragile that once they're down 3-0, it's not hard for them to be down 5-0 very quickly. Now they got their talking to and their confidence boosting talk from Martin St. Louis, and they came out and they scored a couple of goals to at least show that they're putting up a fight. And then they gave up the sixth goal, and that was the end of it. It was
Yeah.
6-2.
Once the ball
So
starts rolling in the wrong direction, it's tough to get it going
yeah,
back.
especially when you're the inferior team
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping this game was a blip. But unfortunately, it's showing more of the same. They're not finding that balance between caution and creativity. And
Yeah. You'll
maybe
get
that's
there.
youth. Maybe it's something else. The good news this week that Patrick Laine got on the ice. He's skated
Oh, I
15
didn't see
minutes
that.
twice.
I missed that.
So hopefully sometime in December he'll be able to play. And obviously it's going to take time for him to find his game, but
Yeah.
hopefully there's good news coming.
Hope it gets there. That's for
Yep.
sure.
And then the Leafs did
Yeah,
pretty well in their two games.
yeah. I
Another
don't.
two without Austin
Another.
Matthews.
Yeah, let's just put the sort of last little while in perspective here. Without Matthews, we're 7-1. We've scored. We only had 15 goals against in those 8 games, so we're under 2%. They've played Berube, started hockey. Well, in defense, we got a dog in the building here now. They're playing like dogs. They're getting in there and barking at the people. So no, but they've
That's some good
definitely,
improv, Phil. That's
yeah,
some real
yeah.
good improv. Thank you
I
for
just went with
covering
the
up.
went with the
Thank you for
punches there.
covering.
Went with
Yeah.
the punches. But I
Thanks for
think they,
covering up for
yeah.
my dog barking.
No, but I think they've settled into a nice thing. They're playing a simpler game, and playing down low hard, and they've been on top. We've out without 7 of our regulars. Domi's now injured. Pacioretty's injured. Knies. Let's talk about that. It on Knies. I don't like. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about what the hell is head shots. Like Reeves goes and makes a shot, no question, headshot on Nurse. But come on, that hit on Nyes. Like even if you can say the shoulder was some of contact, he got the head and he left his feet.
Yeah,
So there
it's the
had to
leaving
be
the
a charge
feet.
on
It's the
that.
leaving the feet that gets me, because you could very well make an argument that he led with the shoulder. He was going for the shoulder and the chest, and it didn't. It caught part of it, and it caught part of the head as well.
But you got
But
to get that
but
stuff
what
out
I'm
of the
hearing,
game.
when I'm hearing TSN guys saying, "Well, he left his feet because he was following through on the hit," I'm like, he was
His feet
off the
was in
ice
the air.
before contact. His
Oh
feet were
yeah,
in the air before contact was made. So
absolutely.
how do you even say
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was just bad. So I'm
Yeah,
confused by what's a headshot, what's not. But whatever. Unfortunately, Nye's now, and he's now this is his second concussion in less than a year because he got concussed in the playoffs, if you recall. He was out for a few
yeah.
games at the end. So you got to start worrying about his health. But so seven guys. Camp is out. Carl Yarncroc is now out long term. It looks like he might miss most of the season.
My God.
Um, so, Matthews, obviously he'll be back this week, hopefully, but in that stretch, they've played well, they've simplified their game, got the power play seeming, and you know what? We've got to see a little bit of the kids. Fraser Mitten's up, he's playing well. He now has as many goals in one shift or three shifts as Robertson has in 18 games. Sorry, did I say it? I said I wasn't going to go there today, and I
You
did.
were going to go there, but look,
It's
if you
justified.
can't, yeah, it's justified, and he's
And he played
he's
on the
not that good.
first, and he played on the Mitten played on the first power play tonight. So, and he looked pretty good. So you know what, getting to see him and this Grebenkin kid, he hasn't done a whole lot, but he's a bit of a character. So I don't know if you've seen some of his interviews. We'll
No. Well,
post
then
some of it,
look,
but he's fun.
I know
He
so
can't
little
speak
about the
very good
kid. I can't
English.
even tell. Yeah. Well, look, I know so little about him. I can't even tell if you're pronouncing his name wrong. So that's how little information I
I can get away with it then. But no, he's a
have.
big kid. He likes to take the body. He can score, he can skate. He's going to take a little while. It's going to be interesting to see once we get healthy in the next week or so as guys start to come back, what Berube does with the lineup because it's obvious this experiment with Robertson's got to be over. It's obvious they can't find someone to take him. I think at this point, you just release them and let him go somewhere else for nothing. And then you
Or
let
just set him on waivers and send
or
him
yeah,
down
exactly.
to
Send him down to the
minors.
minors because no one's going to pick him. And if someone picks him up, who cares? And you say, oh, you're going to lose him for nothing. He's worth a
Lose
fourth or
what?
fifth rounder. So who cares, right? So let him go. Let him go and figure it out somewhere else. Hopefully he does well somewhere else and whatever. But I think it's time to give somebody another chance because if he's going to do nothing, he's got 1 point in 18 games. Let somebody else figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that leaves another question. When Reeves comes off of his suspension, does he have a place on the team? I don't
Yeah.
see how you can play him. He's just he's not bringing anything of value.
Well, I think again, we've talked about this. I think Berube sees the value in him as being that heavy line. Him and
Yeah.
Lawrence and whoever they play with is sort of that heavy line. But I
Yeah, you
agree,
got a
like
couple guys.
but
You've
he's
got
a
a couple guys
liability
on
out
D
there.
that can do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
he's a liability out there. So and now with Hakanpää has only played a couple games and he's seemingly not in the lineup regularly. But and I've said this before with OEL playing a tough game. They've got some tough guys in the lineup, but and there's some main rumor mills about them trying to make some trades. And God, I hope that the whole Kadri thing is not true. That they're going to try and bring Kadri back.
No.
But let's hope that's not true. But I think there's a bigger story going on here in terms of injuries. Like the Leafs have got seven guys out, and this week Ovi gets injured.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's out 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer, with a broken leg. And it's unfortunate. He's 15 goals on the season, tied for the league lead.
Yeah.
27 goals away from tying the record, 28 from leading it. Was looking like he was on a great trajectory. And then he's going to lose a month and a half of the season. Yeah, 6 weeks, month and a half of the season. And then, as you know, you come back, it takes you a few games. So he's going to miss 2 months in terms of before he's back in it. So you're
Yeah.
talking end of January before he's middle of
Yeah. I don't think
January.
he breaks the record this year. Like, so
Yeah,
when
so that just
when I
takes him
painted
out of
those
it.
scenarios at the beginning of the year in our first episode, the injury possibility never really crossed my mind. I thought
Well,
he was either going to go on a tear and get it, or be old and useless and not get it this year. And I did not. I did not see the possibility of door number three, that he goes on a tear and then gets hurt, because
right, and
Ovi doesn't get hurt.
yeah, I was gonna say he doesn't have a history of injuries, so
No.
it's bad. And look at the injury bug is hit, and some of it's not injury. Anderson's injured. Eberle is out for 3 months.
Yeah.
And JT Miller going on personal leave. So we're seeing this rash of injuries and players leaving and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting. We're a week away from that 25% mark of the season, Thanksgiving mark. So we'll see how all this sort of tries to affect the outcome or whatnot. But
Yep.
we'll see. The other thing that happened this week, and I think, before we get into the whole coaching thing, is one of the things we want to talk about is we have to congratulate Sidney Crosby,
600 goals,
one
man.
of the greatest players of our generation, um, to play 600 goals, did it at home. Congratulations to Sidney Crosby. It's going to be
Yeah, it's
great
the
for
how
him
many
to get
players have
that.
done it?
I think that's
I can't.
only a handful of players. I can't
Yeah,
remember what number
it's
he.
pretty amazing, and
Yeah,
because it's not just the goals with him, it's the assists and it's the leadership and it's
yeah,
the the Stanley Cups and the gold medals and the World Championships. He's done everything, and
yeah.
he's just a winner. He's a leader and a winner. And I sure wish he'd been a Hab since day one. Now it was nice. It was nice to get Carey Price in that draft, but man, it would have been nice to get Sydney in that draft.
Yeah, no, we'll change the trajectory. Look, you guys don't need any more Stanley Cups before we get one, but so I'm on the other side of that. I'm sort of glad you didn't get them,
Yeah.
but I
But
guess we got right.
before we move on, I wanted because I sent you this statistic or this trivia fact
Oh yes.
earlier last week. Once we're talking about great players, and it still blows my mind to think about it. That if you took all of Wayne Gretzky's games when he scored 1 point, 2 points, or 3 points, and so you only took the games where he scored 4 points or more, he would still have scored over 1,000 points in his career.
It's mind-boggling when you think of
It's
it.
it's hard to even conceive of that.
No, it's true to me. Like, he was a generational player. Obviously, there's no going to be, there's no going to, nobody is ever going to be like that again, especially the way the league plays. So it just, to
Yeah.
me, what Ovi has done to get to his mark in terms of longevity, um, and consistency to get there, to get on his goal scoring record is
Yep.
truly amazing from a goal scoring perspective, because it's way harder to score that in the last 20 years than it was in Gretzky's 20 years, right? So
Right.
over the period of time they did cross, obviously, but if you took the 20-year average for each of them, the goal scoring has definitely gotten more difficult in the last 10, 15 years.
For
So
sure. For sure. The
it's
other thing that's interesting
amazing.
about Ovi is, he became very famous for using, a 77 flex stick. Like he was like everybody was like, "Oh my god, he uses the whippiest stick." I'm wondering if he pioneered that, or if just because he's Alex Ovechkin, everybody focused on it. A lot of people were using whippy sticks right from the start. But
All right.
now it seems that everybody's using a whippy stick. Like I think Connor Bedard's stick is like 72 or 73.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the quick release, right? It allows you to
well,
it
it's
takes that quick release and just makes it that much snappier. That just much more bullet. The bad thing is, and especially in Berard's case, is that he's a centerman, right? Ovi plays the wing.
yeah,
Berard is statistically the worst centerman
Bedard.
in the league. Bedard, sorry, is statistically the worst centerman in the league from a face-off perspective, and the whippy stick does not help you in the face-off spot.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a really good point because I'm sure well, I don't know how many centers in the league are sitting there with 90, 100 flex sticks, right? Like if there's anybody, it's probably a defenseman but like you definitely can load a lot more energy the more you
Oh,
flex the stick.
absolutely.
Um, but I guess if you're a super heavy player, you can get that much more flat. You can get as much flex into a 90 flex stick because you're putting more weight into it,
Mhm.
and then you're generating a lot of power out of that
Right.
in the end. But yeah, these guys are just ripping pucks with these sticks.
Absolutely, but it'd be interesting, you take because of you're talking about the flex of the stick and it being a whippy and a very low flex stick. It'd be interesting to see if they had this stat. And I don't know if they do, they probably don't. On average, a season, how many sticks does Ovi go through compared to a player that uses a stiffer stick? Now, sticks are breaking all over the place. Now they're down to
Yeah,
the one pieces and
that's
whatnot.
material
But
science.
but but
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see how many more Ovi goes through because of the whip, and he doesn't hold back on those one-timers.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
And he's
So
getting low down to the knee on that to flex the stick.
yeah,
Well, look, these things are all like what, 320, $330 now. Like
ridiculous.
they're not paying for it.
No, they don't care. It's dummies like me playing men's hockey where
Oh my God.
I'm very careful about how many sticks I go through because it's not cheap.
Well, especially because like I play center, right? So I'm
So do
taking face
I.
offs and guys are swatting at sticks, and I'm like, okay, where's the $100 stick on sale for $60
Yeah, absolutely.
in the back of the store?
That or you go to the 100 stick for the face off and you skate by the bench and grab my 85 flex. No, it's crazy. But what a crazy week in terms of the coaching carousel. We talked last week about who was going to be the first coach to be fired. Was it going to be Montgomery, Sullivan, Lalonde in Detroit, or Burnett in
Well,
Nashville?
it was Montgomery.
It was Montgomery, and I would have put my money on Burnett in Nashville. 9 out of 10 times you've asked me. There's no way I would have ever out of those four. I never would have thought it was Montgomery because you looked at the
So
stats.
Montgomery has a lot of respect, and at the time, Boston, with all of their goaltending problems, was still a game over 500.
And they're only a
So
point out of the playoff race.
it really felt like what's going on there that we're not hearing about, that people were losing faith, like Cam Neely. Well, Cam Neely has fired so many coaches of the year at this point. When does Cam Neely get the can?
No
Right?
question, no question. Um,
He's been in the mix as a GM, in the mix,
well, he's
with his
president.
team.
GM is Sweeney, but
GM is Sweeney, Cam Neely is
yeah,
president, right?
yeah.
But like they've been in the Stanley Cup mix for all these years, and they've never won it. And not since 2012 or 2013 or whatever. Like how long does he get a pass?
I don't
Not
know.
getting over the hump and having a record breaking team that doesn't get out of the first round of the playoffs. Like there's plenty of blame to roll around. You don't know you have to throw that at Jim Montgomery.
Right.
And the rest of the league clearly thought he's an outstanding coach and quite a catch because St. Louis decided to just swap it out in the
Five
middle of the
days,
season.
5 days. But you look at the Bruins, they obviously weren't playing typically Bruin hockey. Yes, they weren't that far out of the race. Maybe this was a can we rescue the room and try and get it back so they get them on track before they get too far out of it. Maybe that
Yeah,
was part of it. And you and I were trading some stats. There's four key players that are way off their point production from last year. Now, we all agree that even Pasternak and Marchand are way
Marchand.
off theirs. But you got Pavel Zacha, who last year scored 59 goals. Now this is a couple weeks ago stat. He's only projected to do 19 this year, and Frederic is 40, and he's only projected to make 19. Connor Morgan Geeky, 39, only projected to make 15. Charlie Coyle had 60 points last year, only projected to make 13. These guys are the heartbeat of this team in terms of that secondary scoring, and they're not scoring. And to your point, Swayman's not keeping the puck out of the net because just they're not playing that same team game that they got. So the coach pays the price.
Yeah,
So, and then you flip over to the Blues. I didn't see Bannister being on the. No one was talking about Bannister being on the hot seat anyway in the circles that we ride in. But then I just passed you stats this today and see that wins, goals per game, goals against, power play, penalty kill. They're all 25, 24 or worst in the league. So they see Montgomery get fired and go, hold on, Nashville or Detroit's going to make a coaching change. We got to get on this guy quickly. So that, again, to your point, shows the respect that Montgomery has around the league, that they felt they needed to make a change pretty quickly and get Montgomery so that
yeah,
they didn't lose him to somewhere else. I think that was a big part of why this happened so quickly.
yep, yep. Although it's funny, like St. Louis was going to like the reason why Bannister is gone is because they're struggling offensively. Like that's where it boils down to, and you kind of knew that they were going to have some trouble scoring goals, and then Robert Thomas got hurt.
Yeah.
And you have to expect that they're going to struggle offensively and have to really batten down the hatches defensively to stay in games and to win, as many as they need to stay in the playoff mix.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they're also
but
not playing well defensively. They're minus 21 goals for and against, 74 goals against. They're among the leaders in goals against. So
yeah, so
not
like
great.
they're struggling, and I guess that sort of, every time you hear about a team like the Blues struggling defensively and with their goaltending, it's like, all right, then who is going to be the goalie for Canada? But that's a story
We're
for
gonna find
another
out in
day.
2 weeks. We're gonna find out
We'll
in a
find
couple
out
of
in
weeks.
2 weeks. But they're on. It's an interesting team. I don't know what they think Montgomery is going to do for them.
Well,
Honestly, like
he was the
they kind
assistant
of are
coach
what
there
they
for
are.
2 years, right? So
Yeah.
there's
What,
there's
what,
some familiarity there with the players that are there because there was a number of players that were there when he was there. So I think there's a couple things. Obviously, he's a good coach, good guy. People seem to like him. So they made the move, and then there's familiarity with the team
yeah.
and some of the players. So I think that all just combined, and probably, as I said earlier, there was a worry that somebody else was going to pick him up.
Right.
There was 3 or 4 other coaches on the hot seat. Somebody else was going to make a move, and he was going to be the number one choice for whoever made the next move, right? So
Well,
St.
that's
Louis
interesting because if he's the number one draft pick, um, for coaching replacement, Joe Sacco is um, the interim coach in Boston. Suggests to me that they're waiting for someone. Who are they waiting for? Sullivan? Are they thinking if Sullivan gets fired, they'll pick him up?
or there's one of these things. Do they look at Berube was the interim coach until they won the Stanley Cup, and then even that was later in the season when they made that change. But do they just float along, see how they go along for the rest of the season with Sacco? They don't make the playoffs, or they continue to falter. He's the scapegoat, and he's gone after this year. Or to your point, do they? I just don't see them making a coaching change, putting in somebody interim coach at this point of the year, and then bringing somebody else. I don't. Has that happened where there's an interim coach brought in, and then during the season that interim coach gets replaced? Usually, the interim coach lasts the rest of that year. I don't, we'd have to go do some checking on that. I can't remember that that's
well, I
happened
think.
before.
Well, first of all, they announced Sacco as an interim coach, and I think when the Canadians fired Therrien and brought in Dominic Ducharme, I think there was a gap period in between there. I think
A gap within the season or after the season?
no, like there was like a week or two before they named Ducharme
Really?
coach. Perhaps
Okay.
I could be dead wrong about that. It's just that's sort of the way I'm remembering it.
Well, Sacco now they've won 2 games with Sacco as the coach. Now they beat
Yeah,
Utah, and then they beat who they beat on the other night. They beat two on Detroit. So, they didn't beat two stellar teams at the moment,
yeah,
but they're 2-0 with them, and we'll see. But I gotta believe Sacco will end up being the coach for the rest of the season, unless somebody becomes like a Sullivan or somebody else becomes
right.
available. I don't see Pittsburgh making a change at coach. I can't. I think Crosby would have a
Yeah,
conniption
right.
if that
Well,
happened.
the Bruins and the Penguins are very interesting teams to study right now because both of them are they're either at or coming to the end of their competitive window, and they've got some very expensive veterans now. Pittsburgh's in a very unique situation because you've got Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who are both going to the Hall of Fame. In
Yeah.
Boston, you have Brad Marchand, who I can't believe I'm saying this, is going to the Hall of Fame.
You said it. You said it.
I said it, and it kills me to say it. Like at what point do you pull the ripcord on some of these players? Like Brad Marchand is a hometown hero in Boston, and well, not a hometown hero. He's from Nova Scotia, but he's a hero in Boston, and you'd expect that he's somebody who could play out his career in Boston if he wanted to, much like Patrice Bergeron did, but he still has trade value.
Yeah.
And then the Penguins have guys that have trade value as well. Letang has trade value. Carlson has trade value. I
Yeah.
don't think you could trade Carlson without keeping at least
A
half of his salary.
boatload of his salary.
Yeah, boatload of his salary. But like, at what point do you pull the ripcord on these teams? And especially when you have a guy like Sidney Crosby who's committed to staying in Pittsburgh for the remainder of his career and conceivably wants to compete. How can you build a team around him? You don't really have much of a future
Right.
to mortgage. You've not been drafting stars, so you don't have a huge. Boston has the worst farmed, prospect pool in the league at this point. So it's not like
Right.
you know who are they going to be? So they need to trade for future assets
Yeah, I
if
think
they're
I
going to
think
start over.
yeah, I think this is the season. I think you're going to see as the season goes along. I would agree with you. I think that Bruins and Penguins are in two, to me, they're in a little bit different situations. The Bruins, to your point, they're so close to being in the playoffs. If they pick it up a little bit between now and the trade deadline and they're within the mix of the playoffs, you're probably not making too many drastic moves to lay people off. You're maybe bringing actually people in to try and see if you can do something in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Penguins, to me, are the opposite side. They're not that far out of it, but you got to think that they're at the point where if they're in the next couple of months, if they're not showing improvement, they're going to start laying away some of their assets. Crosby ain't going anywhere. He just signed the new deal.
yeah.
The city might torch the building down if they get rid of Crosby
No,
and the
it's
fans.
not going to happen.
Malkin, they had a chance to get rid of last year and they re-signed him. So maybe keeping some of his salary, trading him away. Maybe there is a way to get rid of Carlson. You know my feelings on Pittsburgh and their management. Dubas does not know how to do a rebuild. He
He's
he
never had to.
never had to. Uh, so I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I got to believe if I'm sitting in that chair in the next 2 months, by the beginning of January, middle of January, if you're not showing some sort of improvement and showing that you might make some stride in the playoffs, you're dumping and recharging to get
You got
some
to
of the assets that you need or some of the future picks or whatnot. You got to do something.
burn it down. Yeah,
You got to burn it
yeah.
down at some point. And Crosby's, you got to think that Crosby's got a lot of say of what's going on over there. So,
Oh, for sure, for
so
sure.
who knows?
And interestingly, like Geno Malkin still has a lot of value, and there are teams out there that want to win the Stanley Cup that somehow have very deep prospect pools.
Yeah,
Like I wouldn't be surprised if you had say Dallas, which has a ton of young players in the pipeline, say we'll send you a pick and one of these prospects for Geno Malkin,
right.
and then all of a sudden they're looking real strong for the Stanley Cup because they've got 500 goal scorer on their team.
Right.
um,
Which depends on which Milken you get, though, right? Like Milken
yeah,
that.
you can have the one-legged Malkin, or you can get the
Yeah,
superstar Malkin.
absolutely. But it's going to be interesting
Um,
to see in the next couple of months who starts to be offloaders versus buyers. Like to your point, does the Penguins, do the Bruins start to trade away? Like some of the teams we thought were going to be probably dumping things were players like Calgary. Um, and so some of the rumors around, but they're playing so well, and then some of the rumors that they're thinking about trading players, I'm like going, hold on a second. Last time I checked, these guys are looking good. Wolf is playing like a all-star in net.
he, he's your
Um,
Calder favorite right
yeah,
now.
so they might not be able. The beginning of this season or over the summer, they actually came out and said we're in rebuild mode. And
Yeah.
they come out and played unbelievably, probably over their heads in terms of the talent on the
Well,
team.
you have to be careful, right? You don't want to fall into the same trap that the Flyers did last year,
Right,
when they were supposed to be in rebuild mode and dumping everything and building for future assets, and they were good, and then they decided to go
right,
for it, and then they fell apart the last 2 weeks of the season, and that was it. And
right.
they come back following year, no further along. They don't have additional assets. The only thing they have to show for that is they got Mitchkov over, and he's playing pretty well for the most part. So,
My
yeah, I
only
think
concern in Calgary would be the fan base. Can you do that to the fan base? They're playing well and yes, over their head. Unless they go into some kind of they get tripped up and go into some kind of spiral downwards. Can you do that to the fan base? All of a sudden give away your assets and then force the spiral?
well, depends on the asset, right? It could be
Right.
a
Maybe
proven playoff asset. It
maybe
could
a
be a proven
Kadri.
playoff asset that isn't playing very well, like Kadri.
Right.
Exactly, right? He's not blowing the doors off it right now. So the fans could probably stand to lose him if something comes back in return that really lets them believe that they're really building something in Calgary right now. From
Right.
you know,
Right.
but
It's interesting.
what other? So we are clearly not going to have time to talk about ratings again.
Oh,
It seems kind of insane, but we'll punt it for next week. The The last thing I wanted to mention was, did you see Leon Draisaitl's 145-foot goal against against Fleury?
I did. The puck, the way it was bouncing was
It
was
was crazy,
crazy.
and Fleury just took a swipe at it and whiffed completely, and the puck somehow got past him.
Uh,
Which reminds you, when you're a goalie, no matter what, you make sure I know you want to sweep that puck away, but no matter what, you stop it first.
that's my point. Is like, look at Fleury. I've said it here, and I said it a few weeks ago. I think he should be the third goalie tender on Team Canada because I think
Mm-hmm.
you add a veteran to the because we clearly do not have a number one right now. Binnington's not playing great. He should be the number one. Hill, I don't know. You forget about the Oiler goaltenders. So I think you need a veteran there, but why are
Yeah,
you
it might
not
end up
just
being
stopping
Montembeau
that
by default.
standing? Yeah, why aren't you just standing there and letting it hit you? Like it actually might be Thompson and is it Thompson in
Logan Thompson's playing
Logan
great in
Thompson in
Washington right
Washington.
now, so
So yeah, but the other so I don't know. It was a comical thing. But we're talking about rebuilding and going for the playoffs. Like you got a team like the Oilers that clearly want to win this year, and then they go pick up off of waivers. Gets Barry Kapanen. Like, is
yeah,
this your savior? What the hell is that?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe well, look,
Oh my
think about
God.
how many teams had to pass on him before he came to Edmonton to make a decision on. Right,
I
everybody else passed on him.
I don't get it. I'm like going,
What
why?
they need to rebuild their blue line. They need two top four defensemen at this point.
Oh,
Um,
it's ugly. It's ugly. But
yeah,
no. So this week, so it was clearly the Leafs have only had they're only going to have a 4 games over the 16-day period. They're in their sort of weird scheduling mix. I was wrong last week. There don't get a week off in both seasons. It's a mid-season break somewhere around the mid-season mark. They get one. It just seems to be a weird scheduling mix. The
sure.
Habs this week had only 2 games this
They
week.
only had 2 games,
So
yeah,
we both
and
had a off, somewhat of an off week for our teams this week. So um, the next week, hopefully the Leafs start. It was good for the Leafs to have this sort of mini, sort of weird scheduling because hopefully you can get healthy. Matthew Nyes, hopefully he'll come back. It sounds sorry. Matthews should come back this week. What is the timeline on Line A? Are they thinking that
they're saying sometime in December.
oh, so not till
So
December. Before
yeah,
Christmas, they hoping?
yeah. Hope so. Hope
Oh, good.
so. I
Hopefully.
mean, he's obviously in a non-contact jersey in practice right now, but he's getting his skates in, so that's good.
Right.
The Canadians have a weird week. They've got Utah and Columbus back to back with Columbus on the road, so they've got to travel in the middle of back to backs, and you know how I feel about that. It's just ludicrous that you could have games on hockey games on consecutive nights with travel in between. That's crazy to me. And then
Yeah.
they got the Rangers on Saturday, which is Saturday at a 1 o'clock game in New York. So that'll be
Yeah, during the Thanksgiving
yeah
holiday.
that
So
yeah. So that'll be a weird one. It's an odd week. We'll see how it goes.
yeah, and the Leafs still have a quiet week. So again, hope they get healthy and whatnot. And maybe that means next weekend. No, we got a big weekend next week. What we got to talk about because we're going to talk about the Thanksgiving theory. I think that'll be the
Yes.
main part of what we talk about next week because just to remind people out there listening, at Thanksgiving, traditionally 72% of the teams that are in the playoffs make the playoffs. That means only 4 teams on each side, sorry, 4 teams overall could
Yep.
change. So
Yep.
we'll see where the playoff mix seems to happen by next Sunday, and we'll have some fun chatting about that. And maybe what makes we get to the ratings.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it eventually. By the time we get to it, we'll have such a big sample. We'll be able to talk confidently about where the hockey ratings are.
Absolutely. Well, it's a fun week, interesting week with some things happening. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family and whatever you do. And we'll see you next week, I guess.
All right. Same to you, Phil. Have a
All
great
right.
Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you next Sunday.
See you later. Have a good one.
All right. Bye bye.